having hypertension and all the rest of it.
For its numerous benefits to humans, the World Health Organization has continued to raise awareness on the importance of addressing the global burden of vision impairment, which is said to affect about 2.2 billion people around the globe.
I'm educating people that it's always good for you to have your eye checked at least once in every 6 months, because there's some hidden eye diseases that you will not know unless you go for a check.
It's also good that you keep and eat a healthy food, foods that contain a lot of vitamins. You can do watermelon that has red in it. You can do pawpaw. You can, all those. You can do vegetables. They have some antioxidants inside it. Those are going to help your eye and keep your eye healthy.
While vision impairment and eye-related problems can cause major disruption and discomfort in life, experts prescribe lifestyle modification and other healthy practices to save the sight organ from damage.
There's a lot of impact in the eye these days, and people need to get aware and get educated regarding this thing about the eye.
We have river blindness, onchocerciasis, we have trachoma that also affect these sites we are talking about. And that is why we sensitize to people to come out, to go to the designated eye clinic in town and have their eye screened so that you can be detected from any problem.
Worrisome also is the toll the pandemic has taken on people's eye, as some now spend more time glued to the screens, thereby facing a higher risk of deteriorated vision.
Using my phone, I reduce the brightness, like the level of brightness. I see some people like it's really bright. That actually affects the eyes. And on phones, you have that setting, like there's something for brightness level, so you reduce that. And you don't let sharp objects get to your eyes.
Some of those rays emanating from your computer screens, they have these short wavelengths that can actually penetrate the eye. They are invincible. You don't see them, you don't see them, but they can penetrate your eye and get to damage a part of your eye called the macula. Over time, it's not something that just happened immediately. It can happen immediately, but over time. So it's important that you also, when you are on the screen, you get your eye guarded, get your eye protected. You could do that with a pair of glasses that has a photochromic effect on it or a transition effect on it with an anti-reflective coatings, or you can do one that has a blue coating on it. That's going to also help your eye and keep it healthy.
I pledge to love my eyes. I pledge to love my eyes because they are precious.
I pledge to love my eyes. See your optometrist for a routine eye checkup.
Thank you.
It is very important to take care of your eyes by eating right, exercising, wearing protective eye gears, and more importantly, taking screen breaks and sleeping well so that your eyes can function well. Yours truly took out time this year's 2021 World Sight Day to check my eyes and love my eyes. I hope you'll do the same.
Yes, Ifoma, I will definitely do the same. I will check my eyes and love my eyes. Thanks so much for the enlightenment. Still to come, a street name that rings a bell in Benin City. Join us again.
Recently, both the president and vice president demonstrated leadership by being among the first Nigerians to have the AstraZeneca vaccine administered to them on live TV for all in the country to see. Subsequently, many federal ministers, political leaders, and members of the presidential COVID-19 task force have publicly taken the vaccine to follow in the footsteps of President Buhari and Vice President Oshibaja. To obtain it yourself, please go to the NPHCDA website. There is a link to click on in order to register and schedule your vaccination. In the meantime, please continue to wear face masks, wash your hands frequently, use hand sanitizer, and observe social distancing. This message was brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Nigerian youths are about the greatest assets the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth entrepreneurship support years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youths, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria. Pacifying the youths, unifying the nation.
Welcome back to The Correspondents. We take you to Benin City, known for its rich cultural heritage that has dated more than 1,000 years. Apart from the historical artifacts that adorn strategic locations across the city, it has been observed that Benins are passionate about their local languages. Little wonder most streets, markets and roads have native coinage. One of such names is Akpakpava. Our correspondent, Ifeoma Okafor, is our guide on how the name Akpakpava came about.
This is the beginning of Akpakpava Road through the King's Square axis here in Benin City. And Akpakpava is one of the most busiest and popular roads in the metropolis. And have you ever wondered how and why the name Akpakpava came to be? Well, I bet you'll be better informed after watching this report. Apart from the rhythmic way Akpakpava sounds, especially to a newcomer like me in Benin, the high number of federal government establishments, banks, and other businesses along the Akpakpava Road is usually of a great interest. One of the oldest churches in Benin, the Holy Arosa Cathedral, is also situated in Akpakpava Road. How did the name Akpakpava came to be?
Around 1255, when Oba Ewedo was able to move from Usama Palace to where the palace, Oba Palace is now. So he started developing the area as a palace. And streets were made out going to different parts of Benin Kingdom at that time. So Akpakpava is one of the straight road, very straight road that was made going to Eastern world, Eastern states. When the Christian came in from Portugal or so, they were taken to SCJ took them to other places where they were to be built their churches. They went to about 3 or 4 places in Benin City here. But this place was suitable, and it was considered that because of the straight road, and because the population, the people passing through it, and it was very straight road, seen very far. You can see people even above 2 or 3 kilometers passing. So they now established the church here.
When the Portuguese came to Benin, and they just saw Benin. They said, "Oh, what a beautiful town. Look at the road, paved very well. We had light. You know, Benin City was the place that had light. Not that it's a question of we don't have Nepal. Let me quote on a quote now. It was had light." And I said, "Oh, come on. This street is like Papa Vera. It's like Papa Vera in Lisbon, in Portugal. Oh, Papa Vera in Portugal. So, but the Benis now couldn't pronounce Papa Vera. They now say Akpakpava. That's how the name Akpakpava came all about. As we are entering the entrance to Akpakpava from the ring road, you will see the Oba, past Oba of Benin, sandwiched by 2 royal guards. Incidentally, one of those royal guards is myself. Of those days, the Osa of Benin, Osa on the right-hand side, Oswan on the left-hand side. Then you now enter the post office. Hope you are getting me now. You see banks everywhere. You now move. You see the NEPA BDC on your right, you begin to go. Then there are a lot of deities. By the time you go further, you see Ebonurue, it's like a deity on your left as you cross, and then as you go further, you come to Ikpoba River, which was the biggest river you can get in Benin at that time. So you can see the importance of that road.
Akpakpava, as it is pronounced now, was actually corrupted from certain Portuguese word. When the Portuguese came, the explorers, the merchants, the missionaries, when they came, and they saw that the Benin Empire was developed, the roads were well laid out. The road dimension was almost equivalent to international standard as obtained in Europe, especially in Lisbon, Portugal. So when those Portuguese came and they saw the roads, and in the night, they have the traditional method of lighting up those routes. And in Europe, it was like a street light. So they wondered, say, how come these Africans, how come the Benin people at that time were able to develop all these things?
Now you know the history and how the name Akpakpava came to be. So next time you visit or pass through Akpakpavira or Akpakpava, just remember that it's not just a name, but a monumental name at that, very dear to the Benins.
Very exciting exposition there on Benin City. Well, Ifeoma Okafor joins us for more insight on the people of Benin and the city. Hello, Ifeoma, welcome to the correspondence.
Thank you very much.
Let's start with the Benin people. They appear to be very interesting people, especially in their cultural and religious beliefs. How has it been living in Benin City?
Okay, yes, living in Benin City, I must confess, has been an interesting experience. Is it their food, the warm nature of the people? Benin that do not joke with their culture and their tradition. Their king, the Opa, their king is known as the Opa. So Benin are very interesting people.
All right, now talking about the popular Akpakpava Road, what makes it unique from other roads in Benin City? From your reports, you mentioned so many other locations. What makes this particular one unique?
Okay, I think the uniqueness of Akpakpava Road lies in the accommodation of many business outfits. Also, the first indigenous church, that's the Holy Arosa, is called the Holy Arosa. It's also situated in that Akpakpava Road, and the Ikpoba Hill River or Ikpoba River, that is very significant. It's also significant to the Benin. So the uniqueness is on this this how will I put it? This nature.
Okay. It looks like an average Benin man or woman has an emotional attachment to the street. Why is it so?
I think the Akpakpava Road, they have Benin, they have the emotional attachment to that road because I think it's because of many business activities on that road. They also have the indigenous church, that's the Holy Arosa. It's very significant to the Benin. And also there's a river is very significant also to the Benin. So they hold it very dear to their hearts, that road, yes.
Okay. Like you have just mentioned, the street accommodates many business outfits. How has this impacted on job opportunities to the youth, improvement in the standard of living of the people?
The road, the Akpakpava road, because the youth are engaged. Many youths are engaged in one business or the other along that road, and as well as into crafts. And this not just helping to better their laws, I think it's also improved on the living standard of the people.
Okay, so from what you have said, it has improved the living standard of the people of Akpakpava, especially talking about job opportunities for the youths.
Yeah, it creates job opportunities for the youth because Benin are known for crafts. And along that road, you also see many of those youths doing one thing or the other in terms of that craft. So it helps to improve on the living standard of the people and also helps to take the youth away from the street. Okay.
From what you have said, you have this beautiful culture in Benin. Tell us, how has it, attracted tourism? How has it attracted international community and recognition and all that?
Benin are known for their rich cultural heritage that's dated for more than 1,000 years. And it's in the area of indigenous music, their food, their cultural attire, their music. So I think they've, just like the late Professor Victor White, who has taken or who took Benin through his music out of the shores of Nigeria. So Benin are very known worldwide in terms of cultural heritage, which they hold dear to their heart and also practice in full.
All right, Ifoma, so much for Akpakpava Street in Benin City. When are you inviting me to Akpakpava to also take a look and also feel it?
Anytime you have time, just call me. I'll take you around Akpakpava. You see the busy road. You see how straight the road from the junction down to the Iboba River. You see all these deities. In Benin. I'll make up time to take you around. You really enjoy Benin.
So much to see, and most especially the food. I love food. Thanks so much, Ifoma, for being part of the program.
Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. So, Benin.
And that brings us to the end of the correspondence this week. Many thanks for your time. Join us again next week, same time on another edition. And a quick reminder that COVID-19 is still around us. Continue to abide by government regulations and safety protocols. And more importantly, get vaccinated, take responsibility and stay safe. And join the NTA on the campaign against rape and rapists and be a star. See you next week. Bye for now.
Coronavirus still dey town.
So you no go still follow us play again? Abeg, wetin be dis, Lara? Life don turn normal now.
But people still dey sick. Some dey even die for dis COVID matter.
Lara dey correct for the matter.
So now wetin we go do? Make we dey use soap dey take wash our hands for at least 20 seconds. As we dey wash am, make we dey sing the happy birthday song 2 times for our imaginary friends. When we dey outside with people, make we dey leave space between una self at least 6 feet. We suppose dey wear face mask if we dey outside. And if person cough or sneeze, make dem dey bend their elbow or use tissue and throw away am well. And abeg my padi, e better make una sit down for house if una no need comot.
But e dey tire person to dey stay for inside house every day. E no bam.
Kanayo, how you go feel if you catch the virus as you dey play for yard? Come give your papa, mama, your brothers and sisters dem.
You dey correct, Lara. You know what am?
Make we form one squad, come call am Operation Run Out Coronavirus. We go do all the preventive measures wey officials don put in place and encourage everybody make dem do the same thing.
Roger that.
Welcome to Abuja, the place that unites Nigeria.
Hello and welcome. It's time for another interesting package of
everything music.
Angelina, you dey cool in my temperature. If you call, I go come deliver.
This is Talking Movie.
Nigeria is set to articulate her position on climate financing, carbon markets and credit at COP26 in Glasgow.
Federal government recommits to repaying the country's debts as economic summit ends.
African Union suspends Sudan from all its activities after Tuesday's coup.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on the outcome of the 4th International Conference on Safe Schools Declaration.
Now, recent studies indicate that attacks on schools at all levels rose by 1/3 globally in 2020 compared with 2019. These attacks led to the closure of schools apart from closures necessitated by the COVID-19 pandemic.
That's right, Nadabo. Now, since the Safe Schools Declaration was launched in 2015, over 12 countries have revised their military guidance on schools and criminalized attacks on schools, as well as the occupation of premises of schools. Now, Nigeria and some of our neighbors have been exposed to a number of these attacks, prompting innovating policies and practices to protect education.
And curiously, about 112 countries endorsed the 2015 Safe Schools Declaration, committing to implementing all related policies, including protecting education during war. 3 other countries, including Nigeria, have drafted plans to protect schools from attack.
Now, at the just concluded 4th International Conference on Safe Schools Declaration, Nigeria adopted the proactive measures to tighten security in schools. It was agreed that child protection advisors should be part of military and peacekeeping operations, and that funding should be increased in conflict-affected areas, while investigations and fair trials should be speeded up for perpetrators of attacks. In addition, military doctrine is expected to be amended to restrict the use of schools by military forces.
And these developments, Kinsley, prompted our conversation on Safe Schools, if you can remember, Safe School Declaration, where 5 guests joined us earlier. And the Minister of State Education, Emeka Nwajuba, emphasized the need for guidelines and more effective modules to address the challenge. While Group Captain Sadiq Garba Shehu, security defense consultant and expert on Safe Schools Declaration, sought collaboration between all government agencies, especially those at the grassroots.
Now, Ali Bukar Dogo, who is the Director of School Services in the Borno State Universal Basic Education Board, lauded the provision of necessary security gadgets and personnel, which he indicated has helped in boosting enrollment and retention of pupils in schools.
And Comfort Umahe, Program and Partnership Coordinator, Plan International Nigeria, explained the child-friendly spaces where children learn through play roles have been established and are helping them overcome trauma.
Now, another guest, Judith Giwamo, who is an education officer at UNICEF, says that communities should be engaged to play their roles as duty bearers more effectively. Well, of course, we'll pick up our conversation from where we stepped off on Monday this week with another set of guests today, but also bearing in mind the outcome of the 4th International Conference, which has just ended. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. I'm Kingsley Osadola. Thank you for being with us.
And I'm Yusuf Nadabo Usman. I also welcome you to the program, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA. As usual, we shall bring you some of our complimentary segments in the course of the program. And for now, here is our colleague Musbah Udan Wahab with the morning news. Good morning, Musbah.
All right, just to let you know, as our viewers, before we get ahead with the highlights of the morning news, that the 2021 National Prayer Breakfast Session is currently taking place at the National Assembly. We shall join the session when the Vice President of the Federal Republic, Professor Yemi Oshibajo, joins the team and, of course, begins with his address to the breakfast session. So once again, the 2021 National Breakfast Session has taken off at the National Assembly Complex here in Abuja, and we shall join the session later to bring you the address by Vice President Yemi Oshibajo. Right now, here's Musbah Udan Wahab with the highlights of the morning news.
Thank you very much, Kingsley. And still on that inspiration note, prayers for peace, unity, stability, and sustainable national development took center stage as President Muhammadu Buhari took time off his busy schedule in Saudi Arabia to observe 2 congregational prayers of a mosque of Holy Prophet Muhammad in Medina.
Inside the Holy Mosque, of course, we have some designated parts of it which are favored in the eyes of the Almighty, and Muslims are encouraged when they come here to pray, to engage in those places. And President Muhammadu Buhari has come here, of course, against the backdrop of the enormous problems that bedevil our own country.
And away from that, President Muhammadu Buhari will lead Nigeria's delegation to COP26 in Glasgow to present the nation's position on key thematic issues, including climate financing and Article 6 of the Paris Agreement on carbon markets and credits.
Critical issues that affect the way we earn, live, and even eat will be discussed and decisions taken. So we need to be there to negotiate and try to influence these decisions as they will positively affect our country and people, even as we join in global efforts to keep the temperatures down.
The African Union has suspended Sudan from all its activities after the country's military overthrew the civilian-led transitional government in a coup. In a communique, the Pan-African body said the suspension will be in place until the effective restoration of a transitional authority steering the country towards elections. Meanwhile, Sudan's ousted Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok returned to his home with his wife late Tuesday, a day after he was arrested during the coup. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke to the deposed Prime Minister on phone following his homecoming. Mr. Blinken again urged the armed forces to free civilian leaders. In the meantime, demonstrations against the military takeover continue in the capital city of Sudan. Back in Nigeria, the Federal Executive Council has given approval to the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC) to invest in the reconstruction of 21 ongoing federal roads projects. The Ministry of Power also got Council's approval for the award of contract by TCN to strengthen and secure the national grid.
There will be no financing problems with regarding the execution of these roads anymore. So some of these roads I've mentioned, let me tell you what has changed. For example, Aba-Ikot-Ekpene Road has an estimate of about 30.399 billion.
Structure supply construction of 55-kilometer Agu-Akwa Umuchi 132 kV double cycle transmission line, and a substation having 2 transformers, 2 by 60 MVA at Ibuchu, Umuchu.
Electoral matters, the wave of the November 6th governorship election in Anambra State is fast spreading in time and space, and the security situation in the southeastern states is making expectations more intense. To ensure there are adequate measures to protect the electorate and voters, the National Assembly Joint Committee on the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has met with the Commission and security agencies.
With the insecurity situation in Anambra State, and that we cannot afford not to hold the election on the 6th. And I just hope and pray that all efforts will be put on table to make sure that this election is hitch-free, fair, credible, and transparent.
We have recovered from the series of attacks on our facilities, and I'm happy to say that we have deployed all the non-sensitive materials, not only to Oka, but to all the 21 local government areas.
In other matters, the federal government is assuring Nigerians that it is committed to repaying debts in line with the country's debt management strategy. At the close of the 27th Nigerian Economic Summit, Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, assured that the borrowings are in line with the nation's socio-economic demands.
Do something about it with the fierce urgency of now. This has to be a collective action. Parents have to be assured that their children will be safe in school. Teachers have to be assured that they will be safe in school. And the children that have gone through those experiences need to be provided with psychosocial support so that they can actually go back and learn.
We feel fairly satisfied that in this partnership with government, we have the ear of government. Government is working hand in hand with us. The private sector is actively involved in the crafting of the medium-term plan, and we will be actively involved in the crafting of the long-term plan.
Mitigating increasing violence conflicts in Nigeria requires the collective efforts of all Nigerians. This is why the National Center for the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons is seeking collaboration of the Nigerian Television Authority (NTA) to curb proliferation of arms in Nigeria.
So while the services are battling, those who are already in possession of these light weapons and small arms, you have a responsibility to ensure that the supply line is cut off completely. So we will help in this direction.
We need to work together in order to ensure that even those that are already in possession of it surrender it, and then those that are having the intention to acquire it see the dangers associated with it.
And those are just the highlights of the news for now. We'll bring you more in the course of the day. What's up? Big program. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll continue in just a moment with Kingsley and Yusuf. Stay with us.
We should understand that the well-being and the security of this country is the paramount to any government. Prior to now, we are doing more of defensive activities to protect our bases and fight the war when we are challenged or when an objective is attacked. But right now, what we do is to carry the battle into areas where the banditries or the Boko Harams or whatever. The Nigerian Army has brought into its platforms the VT tanks, main battle tanks, helicopters, Augusta 135, the MiG helicopters, which can operate even in the night, the Super Tucanos that are about to be launched.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Shola, come and help me. You need to learn.
But I'm more interested in drawing.
How are you going to be part of the business if you don't learn?
You just don't understand.
Morning. Anyone for some Lipton?
The rich taste of Lipton awakens body and mind. Let me have a look at your drawings. Son, these designs are amazing. Lipton Yellow Label Tea. Awaken to what really matters.
You won't go shake your body. Instead, they make it calm down. If the farm say it's happy, you want to grow 6 packs in a day. I beg you not to pass your power. You want to show yourself, oh.
Whatever your size, find it with the new Airtel data plans. Dial *141# now to get the plan that suits you. Airtel, the smartphone network.
There are certain moments in the day when I need my me time to just unwind and indulge.
What is this?
The Cadbury goodness is in every pack of Cadbury 3-in-1 hot chocolate, making you feel cheerful and pleasant.
Now available in 30 grams and 450 grams.
He's falling sick so frequently, either fever or stomachache. I keep him away from junk food.
He also feeds me apples. She says an apple a day keeps...
If you want to keep germs away, then also wash your hands regularly with Dettol soap.
Meaning?
Germs and disease spread through the hand also. For this, use Dettol soap. Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Dettol soap is endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association. Be Dettol sure.
It's a trip to St. James's Park for the Blues as they continue in their bid for the Premier League title. Will the Magpies pull off another surprise? This Saturday, it's Newcastle United versus Chelsea FC on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu, empowered by Integral.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. It's time for business news with the Central Bank of Nigeria warning against fake e-Naira social media handles that are claiming that the central bank is disbursing some 50 billion e-Naira currency. Details of that story and more with our correspondent Comfort Amodu.
The attention of the Central Bank of Nigeria has been drawn to some fake e-Naira social media handles and a fraudulent Twitter handle at e-Naira_CBDC, alleged to belong to the bank, with claims of CBN disbursing 50 billion e-currencies. The Apex Bank has advised the members of the public to be wary of such accounts, as the CBN is not the owner of such handle and suspended its presence on Twitter due to government's ban, and cautioned that the public should seek clarification of the right wallet via www.enaira.gov.ng or call the eNaira Center on 08006936242 or visit any of the CBN branch to make inquiries. In other news, the World Bank says global wealth has grown overall at the expense of future prosperity as well as worsening inequalities. This is contained in the World Bank's new Changing Wealth of Nations report, stating that countries that are depleting their resources in favor of short-term gains are putting the economies on a non-sustainable development path. The Changing Wealth of Nations 2021 tracks the wealth of 146 countries between 1995 and 2018. In the capital market, Nigerian stocks lost steam midweek, with all share index logging a 0.06% contraction to end the session at 41,789.59 points, with equity capitalization closing at 21.8 trillion naira. 284 million shares valued at 3.2 billion naira were traded in 5,036 deals. FBN Holdings, ICO Insurance, and EcoBank topped the activity chart, with business news. Comfort Amodu.
Well, many thanks, Comfort, for the business news. Up next on Good Morning Nigeria is the newspaper review.
Baya Toyobe, our newspaper reviewer, is here with us on the studios. Baya, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Kinsley. Thank you. Good morning, Yusuf.
You're welcome, Baya.
Good morning, Nigeria. Thank you.
All right, Nadabu.
Okay, let's get started with the Nation newspaper here. On the Nation newspaper today, this morning, on the front page of it, we have the following stories. And right above the masthead, we have a story on page 28, and that is IPOP threats. Ohaneze calls for urgent political solution. IPOP threats, that is, Ohaneze calls for urgent political solution. On page 7, hours of to launch e-Naira app down on Google Play Store. And still on page 7, federal government targets 7,000 megawatts with TCN Disco upgrade. 7,000 megawatts with TCN and Disco upgrade. Details of that on page 7. And on page 10, Abuja performs first kidney transplant. Below the masthead, we have Anambra 2021 with the following riders: Why I Want to Be Governor by Soludo. INEC free to transmit poll results electronically. An ADC candidate unveils Umana model. Details of that, of all this rather, on page 27. On page 4, NNPC to fix Lagos, Badagry, Ibadan, Ilorin, 19 other roads, and oil giant to use 612 billion naira tax liabilities for that. That's on page 4. And still on page 4, FBN First Bank of Nigeria Holdings affirms Hassan Odukale a single largest shareholder. On page 4, FBN Holdings affirms Hassan Odukale a single largest shareholder. You have the figures here. Tunde Hassan Odukale has 5.36%, and then I think he's closely followed by Femi Otedola with 5.07%. The main story on the Nation newspaper this morning is governors lobby senators, reps against direct primaries. Governors lobby senators, reps, representative members, House of Representative members against direct primaries. And the writer is, we have gone far with the Electoral Act amendment, says Senate spokesperson. You have the details of that on page 4. Page 4 in the Nation's newspaper this morning is really loaded. At the bottom of the page, that's at the foot of it, we have a story on page 6, which is NDLEA to establish 6 rehab centers. NDLEA to establish 6 more rehab centers, I would say. And then we have on page 23, doctors kick against coup in Sudan. Doctors kick against coup in Sudan. And these are the stories trending on the Nation newspaper this morning, especially on the front page. Kingsley?
Thank you, Honorable. Let's also take a look at the Leadership newspaper, beginning with the lead story, which has a kicker. And it's talking about the 2022 budget defense. Senate rejects 287 billion naira loan request for water projects. Senate rejects 287 billion naira loan request for water projects. Summons minister says no visible results for previous loans. And approves 1,000 naira daily feeding for prisoners. Nigeria's population growing by 5 million annually. That's according to Oshibajo, Vice President. NNPC to fix 21 federal roads at 621.2 billion naira. Yaradwa's Agric Minister, Ruma, dies at 59. Court freezes Benue bank accounts over 333 million naira debt. Convention, that's the kicker, anxiety grips PDP as appeal court rules today. We are not opposed to autonomy for judiciary. That's according to governors. Details on page 6. Bayo.
Thank you. So let's start with the issue of the road. The Federal Executive Council yesterday approved 621.2 billion for Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited to reconstruct 21 federal roads. The Minister of Works and Housing announced this after the council meeting and indicated that the 21 federal roads are across 6 geopolitical zones. He described it as a strategic strategic intervention under the Road Infrastructure and Refreshment Tax Credit Scheme. He explained that the Executive Order 7 of 2019 allow the private sector to deploy in advance the tax they will have paid for infrastructural development. It may be recalled that Dangote Group under Executive Order 7 fixed the Obajana Kaba road from its income tax. In fact, that route should have continued to reach up to Ilorin. Meanwhile, the distribution of the routes are 9 projects are in North Central, 3 in Northeast, 2 in the Southeast, 3 in the South-South, and 2 others in the Southwest. Also, yesterday, contractors to implement the 7,000 megawatts Siemens Presidential Power Initiative, otherwise known as PPI, have been selected and are ready to commence work soon. The Minister of Power, Engineer Abubakar Aliu, appointed 50 days ago on September 1st, said the first phase of the PPI upgrading and expanding the vital transmission company of Nigeria Infrastructure and those of DISCOs is to achieve 7,000 megawatts. The Siemens Nigeria Electricity program is to expand current average output of 4,500 megawatts per hour a day to 25,000 megawatts, more than 5 times the current capacity. Minister Abubakar says that an operational delivery mechanism have been put in place to address the lingering challenges in the power sector in the methodical, systematic, and proactive manner. All licenses are now being monitored to identify in ways that some perform, they are not to perform below expectation. So there is a positive impetus as far as the Siemens contract is concerned. The World Bank has advised that Nigeria oil reserve probably will last for only the next 49 years. The report by the World Bank says unless new wells are found, new oil wells are found or discovered, the current one will last only 49 years. It may be recalled that there is a deliberate policy of government to diversify from over-dependence on oil towards agriculture. However, the report still says that Nigeria still has about 100 years worth of reserve when it comes to gas. So far, the world over, 18 countries have resorted to have reserves that will last 2 generations. 2 generations is about 60 years. A generation is about 30 years. The other encouraging report was shown in the report that Nadabo read, the pictorial report. In UK, the Nigerian High Commissioner, Sarafa Tuji Ishola, is receiving artifacts from arbitrarily taken away from our country. He was being given that at Cambridge in the United Kingdom. Several of such artifacts are available in museums in Britain, France, and Germany. And there's deliberate effort to put pressure on them to return them to where they were illegally taken from.
Bayo, thank you for drawing attention to that story. You said the artifacts were arbitrarily taken from Nigeria. The artifacts were looted from Benin, in particular the palace of the Oba of Benin in 1897 by invading British forces. That's what happened. The artifacts were looted. They were not taken away illegally. Well, of course, looting is illegal. But the proper or the correct expression would be that those artifacts were looted. And they have been sitting in some of them in British museums, the same way other artifacts were looted from other parts of Africa and elsewhere, and also taken to museums in different parts of the world, particularly in Europe. And so this is a healthy development. I saw the photographs. The Prince of Benin was there at the ceremony, and that's Agatise Erediawa, who is a brother to the current Oba of Benin, the second. And then the chief, who also came from the palace and signed on behalf of the Oba of Benin, is a former Attorney General of Edo State, Learned Senior Advocate Charles Wensuye Edosoma. So it's a significant ceremony. This is just the beginning. And part of what was handed over to them was called, it's a bronze cast of a cockerel. There are several others. Of course, you know the famous Idia mask, which continues to be in a basement protective custody at the British Museum. Is, of course, not been mentioned as part of the artifacts to be returned.
Yeah, yes, I was only being diplomatically conscious. You recall that even when we were to have Festac 77, yes, there was a request for Idia mask, but it was turned down. It was only a replica that was allowed. So it should come back to where they belong. There's good news about the e-Naira. It was launched 48 hours ago, and over 100,000 downloads is already been attained on the merchant wallet. However, there was a little a downturn on the Google Play Store domain because of upgrade. The Director of Corporate Affairs, Osita Nwanisobi, says that the upgrade was only to last a few hours. He has ever clarified that the e-Naira platform has not crashed as it's been speculated. Another caution he has also said is that it is not true that the central bank or the Minister of Finance is giving money to Nigerians, and so people should be very careful about fraudsters who are out there.
I was talking about the e-Naira thing, the wallet issue, right?
Yes. Yes. Well, it's a topic that we discussed earlier in the week. Of course, we hope we'll have the opportunity of returning to that subject going forward. But there's something, gentlemen, that I would like us to take a look at. One, the story of the approval, of course, I think this is still ongoing, of 1,000 Naira daily feeding allowance for prisoners. I don't know how much a decent meal will cost, but prisoners, assuming that you get 3 square meals in a day, can 1,000 Naira take that 1,000 Naira indeed as 1,000 Naira without some other costs being subtracted? That's one. Is 1,000 Naira sufficient? But there's a more fundamental issue, which has to do with who these prisoners are. These prisoners are persons who have been either awaiting trial for state offenses, or have been convicted of state offenses, but in the meantime, because prisons is on the exclusive lists and the federal government is the one that takes care of prisoners, so anything, I mean, if any of us were to commit a state offense and face trial and then, of course, get, if not if somebody else were to be convicted.
Well, just waiting for you to learn anyway.
And you are taken to a correctional center. It is the federal government that is responsible for you. So the question to ask is, what is the concomitant responsibility of state governments in taking care of inmates? What is because the truth of the matter is that when you go to a number of these prisons, one, they are congested, like because they are overcrowded, the population is excessive, and you look at them, they are all emaciated. By the time they come out after a couple of weeks, you can't even recognize them. Part of the implication will be, of course, they are suffering from either malnutrition or otherwise. So what is the concomitant responsibility of state governments to ensure that inmates of correctional centers who have committed state offenses, or all of them, also have a fair deal in terms of looking after their welfare?
And so can also be said about the local governments too, because all correctional centers are situated in local governments, and of course, these are the locals that are part of it, because everybody is part of the local government.
You will be surprised that at the Senate committee where this was proposed, what was proposed in the budget was 750 naira. And distinguished senators argued that, can you feed an individual 3 times a day with 250 naira? And that is why, through the process, they increased it up to 1,000. The proposal there was 750. It means that currently it's less than 750.
And let's not even forget correctional centers.
There's this other good news. There's this other good news that I like to share. Federal government has commenced a harmonization process intending to check disparities in the salaries of its employees in the ministries, departments, and agencies. The head of service of the Civil Service of the Federation, Dr. Folashade Yemieson, says that the process might be completed before the end of this year. Dr. Yemieson chairs the Presidential Committee on Harmonization of Salaries of Ministries, Departments, and Agencies, and says a lot of work has been done with the support of the National Salaries, Income, and Wages Commission. She pointed out that a major challenge is a huge disparity in salaries of personnel in agencies with high salary and the core civil servant whose salary are abysmally low. It may not be possible to bring those high down, and it is possible to bring those who are low higher up. So those are the possibilities.
Why not? It's an issue. We have drawn attention to this particular issue on Good Morning Nigeria. The Minister of Finance has spoken to it as our guest on the program. The same way with the Honorable Minister of Labour and Employment. In principle, it should not be impossible to say that extravagant salaries cannot be reduced. And therefore, if it is to say play catch-up by increasing the salaries of those below, you worry about your recurrent expenditure. And if your recurrent expenditure continues to balloon, where are you going to get the money for capital development projects? One last point I would like to raise, Nadabo. I know that the Vice President is indicated that Nigeria's population growing by 5 million naira annually.
5 million?
5 million.
Not naira.
No, sorry, 5 million. That's right, 5 million annually. That's another bomb that we are dealing with. And unfortunately, we haven't drawn sufficient attention to this particular subject. We are saying we are 200 million. This is a big challenge. If you look at the rate of population growth in Nigeria, it's about 3%. But the rate of our economic growth is less than 3%. Fertility is above 5% for women. Yes. So what is it that we are doing about our population explosion?
That's a big question to answer, and really a topic to really look at sometime someday on Good Morning Nigeria, if possible. Bayo, thank you so much for being part of this program this morning. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a break, and the conversation continues in a moment. Stay with us.
The broadcast media ecosystem is dynamic and requires continuous training for practitioners to perform optimally. NTA TV College Jos invites relevant officers to the following specially packaged training programs. Transmitter operation and maintenance. Date 1st November to 5th November 2021. 1 week. Photojournalism and photography. Date 8th November to 26th November 2021. 3 weeks. Advanced broadcast accounting and auditing. Date 22nd November to 3rd December 2021. 2 weeks.
The course fee for the 3-week course is 130,000 naira per participant, while the fee for the 2-week course and 1-week engineering course is 100,000 naira only per participant, accommodation inclusive. The venue for all courses is the serene and secure environment of NTA TV College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. For more inquiries, please call 0803-314-43830 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College, Jos, training you to be the best you want to be.
We are all Nigerians. Against all odds, we shall and must remain united. We may have our challenges, our problems, and setbacks. However, together we shall overcome them all. What doesn't break us shall make us stronger. This is the mindset that shall bring peace, progress, and prosperity to our beloved country. Do not let tribal and religious sentiments govern how you think, act, or feel. Don't be influenced by those who want to destroy our precious national unity. Everybody who is a Nigerian is your brother and your sister. This is the mindset of the new Nigeria. It is also the mindset that we must all adopt. Let us support each other in creating the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
It's a trip to St. James's Park for the Blues as they continue in their bid for the Premier League title. Will the Magpies pull off another surprise? This Saturday, it's Newcastle United versus Chelsea FC on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu, empowered by Integral.
Now, as a prompt for our conversation this morning, let's listen to excerpts from our last discussion on Safe Schools Declaration compiled by Joseph Otse.
There are some threats that might become cyber tomorrow, the ones we've not even heard of right now. There are things that are new, upcoming, and that we've not experienced them. But we need to stay focused, stay ahead of the game, not a knee-jerk reaction or that. Prepare guidelines, set out modules, everything, and keep working, because we know that life happens and therefore we must happen to life.
I would suggest is that we should see more and more collaboration between these ministries, between different intergovernmental levels of the state, at the local government, and even at individual school levels. Because at the federal government, you have the Ministry of Education. Certainly it's an education matter. It is also a security matter. So you have Ministry of Defense, you have Ministry of Interior that has civil defense under them, you have Ministry of Police Affairs that has to play a role. It is also an issue of signing conventions or agreements, in which case the Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs will also be involved.
With the provision of all these necessary security gadgets and the other personnel, security personnel, it has improved on our enrollment, it has improved on our retentions, and then it has also improved on our transition to the next level.
The community are one of the most strategic partners, because they're in the vicinity of the school. Before the security can come from the state, the community is there. How can we, engage the community so that they know that they play their role as duty bearers, key duty bearers?
Especially in the schools where we are working, we established child-friendly spaces where children come, they learn through play roles. So some of these services, some of these activities they engage in also help them to overcome trauma.
All right, now those were excerpts from our conversation on the same subject on Monday, which was the kickoff of the 4th International Conference on Safe Schools Declaration. Of course, the conference was hosted by Nigeria, and it ended yesterday. So we have in the studios to discuss the outcome and other related issues, 2 guests with us. First, let's welcome the Permanent Secretary of the Federal Ministry of Education, Architect Sonny Echono. Pleasure to have you with us this morning.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Okay. Also here with us in the studios is Mrs. Judith Giwa-Amo. She's Education Officer at UNICEF and also National Coordinator of Education in Emergencies Working Group. She was our guest on Monday. Pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Happy to be here. Good morning.
Okay. Well, let's begin the conversation with Architect Sonny Echono, who, of course, is the Permanent Secretary in the Federal Ministry of Education. You were a participant at the just concluded 4th International Conference. How did it go?
Fantastic. It went very well. As you recall, this is the 4th time the conference has been organized. And we had partners, 5 different partners, including the first 3 organizers. It all started in Oslo, in Norway, in 2015, when the Safe Schools Declaration was muted and agreed upon. And we have Argentina and Spain as other hosts in 2017 and 2019, respectively. They were joined by the African Union Commission, as well as the Global Coalition to Protect Education to Attack. These were our principal partners, but we had everybody, because of the Global Coalition, we had all sorts of key actors in the United Nations space. We even had artists, David Beckham, people from CNN, and such other networks joining us to try and propagate this. And the attendance was fantastic. The outcome very, very enlightening. We had various experiences, some, if you like, not so good experiences. We spoke to children, victims of these attacks, and they gave us their experiences, and we were also able to share in their pain. There were some good stories, those who were able to move on and also complete their education and are doing things with themselves. So on the whole, we were able to share practices. We examined what happened here, particularly in the Sahel region, our sub-region, and the good practices that have been done in other countries that have had similar experiences from Pakistan, Afghanistan, and other parts of Africa, in Yemen, in Libya, and so on. So it was a good experience, and we hope going forward, just as the theme of the conference indicated, we will move from commitment to actual practice.
Pamsek, looking at this very conference held in Nigeria, this is the 4th, I believe, and of course, if I could just really go through and remember what one of the participants, Zamanef, I think, of the, full-blown participant, I believe he was saying there was something different about this Abuja conference, and then it's unlike the other 3 previously held in certain countries. How different was this conference, looking at you as somebody who has been at the center of it, and of course, the hosts?
Thank you. You see, Nigeria is more like the epicenter of the subject matter we were discussing. So we had the actual experience of it, from the first experience in all the various attacks that you are very familiar with. And even in the very recent past, we've had cases of school invasions, kidnappings. So we are talking about being at ground zero, as it were. Mm-hmm. Also, because we've also had some experience over time in dealing with what we call the Safe Schools Initiative. So we had a lot to share. First, the fact that at the height of the Boko Haram insurgency, we experimented with taking children from traumatized areas, from areas that are affected by these attacks, from Buniyadi, from Dapchi, from
Chibok.
Mm-hmm. And we took these children to, using our model because we have our federal unity colleges,
Right.
where we bring children from all parts of the country into specific locations to foster integration and national unity. We took some of these children and we took them to various schools across the country. Now, that experience, we have both the positive and the negative. Many of them were able to finish their education and move on. But there were others that had traumatic problems. Others had difficulties on even being able to integrate with other students. There were issues about whether they were being well accepted by other students and so on and so forth. So these are things we were able to share, and we were able to see the issue of the psychosocial support. The training that we're now giving our teachers is also something that we were able to share with the rest of the world. We've been able to develop what we call guidelines for implementation. This was agreed upon, and at the last National Council on Education in Jalingo, in Taraba State, it was endorsed by all the states. So we've now moved, we have a framework now for implementation, and we are sharing this with all actors in the states, with our military. For example, Nigeria now has accepted the fact that we're not going to be using schools for military purposes, not as bases, not at even for landing helicopters or supplies, because that breeds its own. It makes schools now targets, and that has its own consequences. So we've also signed in on that, and we're doing a whole lot. So it was a very good opportunity for other parts of the world to also learn from us, despite the fact that we are also the primary victims.
Oh, thank you so much. We are supposed to have been joined by two gentlemen, and for some challenges, we were unable to have introduced them much earlier, but it seems one of them is right now here with us, joining us via Zoom, and that is Group Captain Sadiq Garba Shehu, retired. Group Captain Sadiq Garba Shehu is a security and defense consultant and an expert in self-school declaration. You're welcome, Group Captain.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. Let's move on with you before we let go again. Give us your overview or what you're able to make out of this three-day conference that was held in Nigeria, talking about self-school declaration.
Well, picking Nigeria to host this conference, the fourth ever, is as a result of the political commitment that Nigeria has shown since the self-school declaration was launched. It is on record that Nigeria was among the first 15 countries to sign up to the self-school declaration. And that's on the positive side. On the negative side, right now we stand as one of the countries with the worst figures of attacks on schools and the kidnapping of school children. So evidently, the international community would like to host the meeting in a country that will bring a lot of attention. Now, having said that, the purpose of such conferences, like the PAMSEC has said, is to share ideas. School attack did not start in Nigeria. It started somewhere maybe in Iraq with people that have grouse with children going to school, and many other countries. If you check the literature, you will see other countries that have similar problems that we have. So when you have such an international forum, it is an opportunity for all the countries to bring what they tried and for other countries to see what could work and what could not work. When we say global best practices or international best practices, there is tendency for people to exclude Nigeria. But Nigeria as a country also is part of the international community. And I'm sure, even though unfortunately I didn't attend this event, but I have been part and parcel of many engagement concerning the school self-declaration project. Definitely in Nigeria also, there are good practices that Nigeria can share. And this has been captured in many literature. For example, when after the Chibok and the attack in the Northeast, Nigeria introduced the concept of alternative places for education. Some schools were transferred out of security challenge institutions. Of course, there are some logistic problems, but all the same, it is one of the good concepts that are introduced to move schools, because the idea behind safe school is that education is so important that no matter the level of insecurity, no matter the level of conflict, every effort should be made to ensure that children continue going to school. So it is for looking at not stopping education, but somehow finding ways to continue education. So this alternative school program, which was practiced in the Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe states, was a good global best practice that has entered into the channel. Another global best practice that Nigeria has introduced, in as much as you want security in schools. Again, there are psychologists, child psychology experts who believe that if children are seeing soldiers holding guns in school, that will add to the trauma that one of the guests here have spoken about. So what did Nigeria do? Between a collaboration with UN agencies, other NGOs that form the Education in Emergency Working Group, and also with collaboration between Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Education, a collaboration was found where, as much as possible, the presence of armed military personnel is reduced. How do we do? While soldiers will be there to provide schools, to provide some teaching or to provide security, a sort of working arrangement was worked where soldiers will minimize carrying their weapons into the school compound by respecting a certain distance, by respecting certain place where they will keep theirs. It's a balancing distance. Again, this is another global best practice which Nigeria has contributed to. So by and by, going ahead again, like the PAMSEC said, meetings, conferences are good. But what is more important is carrying forward. I am appealing to all the stakeholders, federal government, state government, private school owners, local government, NGOs that have been trying, and UN agencies, global coalition. Please, we should not go to sleep after this conference. We should put concrete measures to ensure that these things are carried forward. That is what I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Group Captain Sadiq, thank you very much there for your contribution. Of course, we'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Now back to the studios, Mrs. Judith Giwamo, tell us, what was the experience for you at the just concluded conference?
One of the key things we look at in education is child participation. We had a very good outing of children. We heard their voices. They told us how we had the Borno State Children's Parliament. They had their speaker, they had their honorables, and these children were speaking, and they spoke so confidently. They talked about the impact of attacks on their school. They talked about how they want those that have committed to take measures to implement the Safe School Declaration by making sure that we're able to provide safe learning environment for them. They told us how they feel safe, the impact, on them in terms of the psychological trauma. So hearing their voices, they had their own manifesto and they presented it to the world at the end. So that was nice. And then having an aggregation, looking at it, Safe School Declaration from the legal side as to what is being done to investigate issues of attack, what is being done to prosecute and to reparate, what is being done for victims. Is there anything that is being done? Do we have a robust system? So this was part of what came out, that we need to have a robust reintegration system whereby there can be some kind of rehabilitation of those that have, been affected, those that have been abducted, and those that have probably gone through maybe sexual gender-based violence and all that, so that they can be able to be, healed and face the education system again. So from the legal aspect, what are the laws? How the laws need to, that whole process needs to be followed right down to the end. Then looking at the continuity of education, that was one of the best practices, like he shared, that was shared. We actually got the Cameroonian experience, the Minister of Secondary Education. She talked about, Nigerians, the influx into Cameroon, and how they had to, establish camps, and how they had to utilize one of the alternative forms of education during, as an inheritance or something that came out from the COVID, and how that was used to actually increase or improve education indices. She actually mentioned data on improvements comparing 2019 to 2020 and how that can be used. But she emphasized the need for financing, public financing for education. What are we doing about it? She mentioned the President Biya and how support had been given because they went into digital education, they needed tablets and things like that. But on the overall, she emphasized that a lot of improvement has been made using this form of education. So that could be an alternative, because the Safe School Declaration is talking about school continuity. Even in times of conflict, we don't want schools to stop.
I was just going to say, if you remember some of the things the children said about what their experiences were. Yeah. Part of my own fleeting experience is too remote now to dredge up. But I do recall that just at the onset of the Civil War, the military, after the secessionists had invaded the old Midwest, and Murtala Mohammed led the troops that flushed them out, the forces occupied St. James's Anglican School. That's smack in the middle of Benin City. And we used to go around, of course, schools were closed, and we used to go around to play. But it created some impact, because after they left, we then started playing war games, using catapult and other things, you know. But what did they tell you about their experiences in being displaced from their schools?
So that psychologically, for them to return to the schools, that fear, that vision of the last time they were there, and then sometimes the school, like the Education Emergencies Working Group, one of the things we have done is to develop what we call tools to look at attacks, and look at even including tools to say, before return back to school. You cannot expect children to return back to school where the evidence of what happened is there. You know, so there should be a way that before they return back to school, the environment is made more attractive. A safe school is a school that a child looks forward to going to. So when you see a child saying, I don't want to go to school, and keeps on saying, there's something. So if that school environment is attractive, we look at, you know, psychosocial support, which is psychological healing, ways to do that, so that the child, like you said, those experiences, you might not be able to totally wipe them out. And indeed, some children, depending on how severely they've been affected, they may need to be referred to specialists.
Okay, thank you so much, Judith Giamu. Pamsek, just like who are recollecting, most of us who are just part of this history, thinking about maybe when the war ended, and then soldiers were, you know, dispersed back to barracks, why there were barracks and why there were no barracks. Of course, the ultimate place to go was the school.
That's right.
I remember in our school then, there's a Mubi 2 primary school in Mubi. We've been asked to really leave the school. I remember I was in primary 2 then. We were asked to leave the school, and of course, we were marched to another school far away. By the time we came back to our former school, we found the school more or less like not the way it was as we left it, given the fact that some people were here. The second point I want to make is the fact that then, when you see the military man, you see him as somebody who's from another world. He is not part of the civil society. He's supposed to be somewhere in the barracks exclusive. But now here we are intermingling with them and having them all over the places, and we can now know why the reasons are there. And if we can look into this conference, it's more or less like a peer review conference. And Nigeria being very central in this, given the fact that the insurgency has forced a lot of children out of school, coupled or complicated by the COVID-19. At the international and then the subnational level, how was the peer review? Talking about what we got from the Northeast, all right? And of course, what is happening in the Northwest, which may not be exactly what the Northeast is practicing. And looking at Chad, Cameroon, and Niger too, as having their own issues. How did it play out?
Actually, it was an interesting find, you know. Excuse me. From the excuse me. From
Sorry,
the,
you need some water?
Conversations we had, yeah.
Yeah, please.
And for most countries, the focus was on what did you do? And for Nigeria, 3 things happened by way of lessons. First, conflicts always happen ahead of military deployments, which means when these kidnappings or attacks on schools happen, sometimes the military are not deployed in those locations. And in trying to repel such attacks or to protect the community, the military will necessarily need to make arrangements, have a base where you can mobilize your equipment and forces before you plan your activities. And yes, in the past, schools were the most logical area. Most communities don't even have too many public spaces. So they use schools. But this declaration is saying that you should look for other spaces other than schools, because schools are areas where you are going to have to bring children who are impressionable and who, as we said, need to continue education even in times of conflict. Because we want that continuity, we also encourage that spaces other than schools should be used for such. The other aspect is that we felt that, and we were able to share this, we are proud to report that a lot of countries actually look up to Nigeria in terms of the ways we've been able to, in our own way, manage situations. For example, we did develop alternative curricula, accelerated curricula for kids who have dropped out of school, given the length of time it has taken to control this insurgency. And these accelerated programs help kids catch up when they drop out and they have to come back. We've also taken education. We have what we call alternative schools program. We've taken education to IDP camps. And while all of this is happening, we are still able to teach them, provide some level of support, and also encourage them to even take their attention from the facts of what the conditions that they are facing, and be able to learn and acquire knowledge and skills that will become useful in the years ahead. We were able to do that. And we are also happy with the level of commitment our government has shown at various stages of trying to support education, trying to improve the welfare of teachers, trying to increase funding for education, which is very important at times of conflict. We did emphasize that in the communique. And finally, also, some of the measures we took in response to COVID that are also applicable in terms of ensuring that school continues even at times of conflict. For example, adopting technology, being able to broadcast content. Again, we thank NTA, FRC, and all the other media that helped us to partner to be able to broadcast content for our exit classes and for other schools. Also leveraging on technology, having devices in our schools, transforming the mode of pedagogy, how our schools are organized, how teaching and learning is undertaken in our schools. These are some of the things we were able to share with our compatriots. Now back to the question about what is happening in the other parts of our sub-region. Again, because increasingly in Mali, in Niger, in Chad, and also in Cameroon, we've had similar experiences. Sometimes also the forces against us are very mobile. They move from one part of the region to the other. And a concerted approach, an integrated approach of trying to monitor, to share intelligence, share information, and also have joint operations have been very effective in trying to limit the impact of this. And we hope that as we are also partnering at various organizations in which we belong and also working on similar strategies, we'll be able to address the challenge of ensuring that schools are safe. Also, finally, the issue about the other impacts, because safety of schools is not only limited to military or insurgency. There are other impacts about safety. Issues that my colleague talked about earlier, things like sexual violence, for example, and the linkages that these have, issues about molestation, bullying, drug addiction, and so are all consequences. In fact, the biggest consequence is the fact that when schools are attacked, the tendency is that the boys go through all forms of indoctrination, mind-bending, and they even do get recruited over time to become parts of the insurgents or part of those who have attacked them. While the women are taken into forced marriages, in some cases we have all sorts of rape, and you see even when we recover these children, some are carrying children, and all of that, because of all the trauma and all the things, the experience that they have.
Okay, thank you, Architect Chono. We'll come back to you. Now, back to Group Captain Sadiq. Group Captain Sadiq, tell us, let's have a clearer understanding. We know that at least in the northeast of Nigeria, the country has been at war with insurgents. So that's war, defined in clear terms. But what we do have in some other parts of the country, say in the Northwest, and lately now in the Southeast, but mostly in the Northwest and parts of the North Central, you are having non-state actors who are acting as bandits and kidnappers and so on and so forth, and still making school environment pretty unsafe. Will the same guidelines apply to what happened in the Northeast, where you had, as I said, full-scale war against insurgents versus kidnappers who are operating to collect ransom and then undertake other forms of criminality?
Thank you very much. Yes, we have different kinds of threats against education. So arising from the subsequent declaration, there is a group called the Global Coalition for the Protection of Education Against Attack. In the guidelines they formulated, they classified attacks against education into 6 or 8. I really cannot remember. Either also or 6 or 8 acts have been identified as attacks against education. This group of acts could move from directly attacking the school, or attacking teachers, or attacking students, or attacking.
Freeze there. The Zoom connection by group cap.
That also counts as attack. Hello, are you hearing me?
All right, we are hearing you now. We lost you momentarily.
Okay, so the Global Coalition for the Protection of Attack Against Education has classified 6 to 8 acts that could count as attack. Some of them are direct attacks on the school premises, students, teachers, or school infrastructure. Some other things that could be considered as attack: kidnapping of students for ransom or for whatever purpose. Some other form of attack could be even using the school for a security purpose, maybe as a military depot, as a police depot, or as a place for armory. I go back to the discussion before you called me in. Use of schools by security forces or police has become normal. However, what this guidelines are telling security forces, be they military or police, is that in as much as recognizing that sometimes police or army will enter into a school, like the PAM said, to be near to the place where they are transferred to operation. What the guidelines are saying is that at the back of the mind of the military or police commander, he should always ask, is there an alternative place apart from school where I could put my men, where I could put my ammunition? If there is an alternative place, it should not be a default mechanism that you go to school. You should look for that alternative. That is, but what I'm saying, it has taken cognizance of the practicality. Sometimes occupying the school is as a result of practicality. Now, if it is practicality, there is not any alternative method. What the police or the military are expected to do when they are leaving the school, wherever military or security force stay, there is possibility of leaving unexploded ordnances. There is a possibility, depending on how they live, if there was an attack on the place, they could leave some rifles or some grenades. They are to make sure that before leaving that place, they clear of all these incidences. And again, back to using alternative school method, taking us back to history, as early as during the Civil War, because I heard you mentioning the Civil War, it is important to note that the issue of protection of schools was an issue even during the Civil War. There is this school, one of the federal government colleges, called Federal Government Eposi. I think it should be in I don't know, it's one of the southeastern states now. It was, started in 1965. But 1967, federal forces converted that school as an armory or as a depot. And the students have to be evacuated and shared between Federal Government College Ori and Federal Government College Sokoto, my alma mater. So what I want to say, the issue of education, protecting education against attack, is a global concept that should be embraced by all countries. The idea, like one of the guests said, is to ensure education is so important. The future of children is so important that everything should be done possible, even where conflict is ongoing. As much as all efforts should be geared towards ensuring that there's no break in the education of the children by using the different methods. So different attacks, whether by bandits, whether by Boko Haram, whether even use of the schools by our own Nigerian police or Nigerian forces are among some of the activities that have been defined as attacks against education, in quotation, attacks against education. So all these 6 categories, military and security forces, are enjoined to avoid them. Of course, some of them, like I said, is as a result of reality. If you are passing through Kaduna, around this Fulani town, there is one, because that is my road, there is this primary school just by the roadside. You always see police there. Now, I agree it's for the police to be nearer to the bandit. But like I said, the teaching is that a military commander, a police commander should consider, must it be the school or I have an alternative? Now, another global best practice I want to talk about is that about a week ago, the Minister of Defense, in collaboration with the working group on attack against education in Nigeria, which is a conglomeration of IGOs, they launched a document, which is a training manual for Nigerian security forces and all security agencies, whether police agency. It was launched on that day. Now, the challenge is a very good product. I am proud to say that I took part in, in designing that booklet, but that is not the issue. The issue is that we should try and bring the content of that book into the hands of our policemen and our maybe civil defense, whatever, any security agency that involved with providing food or occupying food, they should know what the content is there. Because I will tell you, as a former security man, it may not make sense to a security man, for example, working in Northeast, if you tell him why did the commander put his soldiers in a school? But by giving them that, that document and the reasoning behind, there's easily no trauma. It's not likely that what we are trying to avoid is trauma. So please, I want all the stakeholders that are ably represented here, the PAMSEC is here. Let's make sure Ministry of Defense is there. Let them make sure that this document, because we have a tendency of making documents and then leaving them in drawers. Please, we should bring these documents and make sure they are widely populated and circulated. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay, Group Captain Sadiq, thanks a lot for your explanation. I was just wondering, the categorization that I tried to make as a preface to my question was that in the Northeast you have a full-scale war against insurgents. But in the Northwest, for instance, that has been mostly impacted by kidnapping and banditry, the targets are mobile, and you don't have the whole idea of occupation. In some cases, the forces come in after the fact, and the victims have been marched off to some remote locations. What can be done in those circumstances, around those schools that are obviously, of course, after such attacks, get deserted by the teachers and then by the students or pupils?
Okay, thank you. Yes, like you said, after the fact, what do we do? There are both early warning systems. There are proactive measures that all actors, beginning from school owners, even PTA, school authority, could take to minimize, if not prevent attacks on school, but to minimize their effect. I will just go through some of them. For example, it goes without saying that you need a perimeter fence around the school. Even if it will not stop attack, at least it will delay the attacker. It will also serve as a deterrent. It will take a lot of money to erect, but that is the ideal. Secondly, there is awareness of the community. Earlier on, one of the guests talked about security. If I recall the attack on Ankara, experience has shown before any mass abduction, there is definitely going to be a reconnaissance. The group is not just going to come into the school. They must have come a day or 2 days before. If these communities around the school, if the local may guard in the school, who may not be well trained, but if it's told to look, pay particular attention to somebody passing several times in front of the school or asking questions around, sensitizing the people, he might be able to pass an information that will stop an attack on school. Another something that could be done is that schools should be required, and here again, with due respect, the PAMSEC education is there, even at state level. It is state government and federal government that award, that give permission for setting up schools or for renewal of continuation. It should, for example, be a requirement that for every school, you must have a basic security plan. Security plan should involve drills. What happens if there is shot at the gate? The children are notified, and there is a requirement to regularly carry out that drill. I think the state government and the federal governments can do that. This drill will ensure it may not stop the attack per se, but it makes sure that the students, the teachers, the drivers in the hook, they are not completely helpless when an attack happens. Maybe they could be told when they are firing, the normal, reaction for somebody who's not a military personnel when they are firing is to start running, standing up. You could tell them when you hear this thing, go to the back of the desk or the back of the wall and lie down. These are some small things. Then there should be requirement to also carry out this. So apart from making sure that schools have security distance, there should be a requirement for schools. Now I come to us, what I mean, me and you, as parents of children. How many of us take the time, despite the fact we pay sometimes millions of naira for our children, how many of us take time to say, Mr. Principal, what is the security plan you have? This school attack is becoming a phenomenon. It can happen anywhere. I want to know, what do you have? At least having it. If he doesn't have it, you will take him to task because you are paid, especially those that are paid for private schools. But even for the public schools, the government can do that. Well, for private schools, the PTA, there should be that awareness. So in essence, what I want to say, I agree with you that sometimes we go after the attack. But definitely, if you look at the document that is produced for Nigeria, for the Nigerian Security Forces, there are things that Minister of Education should do. There are things that PTA should do. There are things that school owners should do. And this involves both actions to prevent an attack, actions to minimize the effect of an attack, and then actions to do when attack happens. So the idea is, awareness and generating awareness and making laws or requirements, because if you don't put laws, if you don't put it as a requirement, we will finish this conference and then we'll go back to sleep. And I don't want that to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The conference is already over, and I think we're just trying to see how or what the best we can make out of it. Thank you so much, Captain Sadiq. Before we get down to you, Judah, let me throw this to the PAMSEC here. Already Sadiq has mentioned some of them, and that is trying to secure the school and make it, attractive for students to really be going there to learn. I remember in the past, in the 70s and 80s, Kingsley, in schools, there were these, retired servicemen, they were employed in schools. That's right. Now we call them zombie or whatever. Then, as the name goes, in various schools, either one or two, that check and then enforce discipline, and of course, try to save the school. Secure the school. Things were okay then. The ground was very level, and there was no much problem. Today, here are big challenges. We don't even see this, handful of retired servicemen in schools anymore. And there are so many of them out there. The problem is we don't really utilize our retired professionals or servicemen or whatever, all spheres of life in Nigeria. But this is paramount and very much, critical in the sense that these ex-servicemen could be used in trying to, get back, make the schools much more safer. I don't know whether the conference looked at that or is the ministry trying to contemplate doing that, especially in the Northeast and the Northwest.
Actually, this is part of our response to the security challenges. And I'm glad a lot of the things he mentioned are actually already being implemented and adopted. There is a presidential committee on security that has a subcommittee on school safety. And I was privileged to serve on that. And we've done a whole lot of work. We have done a risk assessment of all our schools, both federal, state, privately owned, faith-based organizations across the country, in partnership with the defense intelligence, with civil defense, and all the other people involved in the security apparatus. And what we did was to classify them in terms of the level of risk. Some schools are in such remote locations that they are prone. Some are based on the nature of, besides location, also the structure of the environment in which they are considered high risk, some medium risk, and some relatively low. And we have designed a 3-layer security architecture for those schools. The first starting from the level of the schools themselves. And these are some of the issues he talked about. That within the schools, we should have some basic preparation of the students. In the event of attack, what do? You don't gather and make yourself easy for large numbers to be abducted. What even a typical child, and we are introducing clubs now that are actually protecting children. If you see in so many other countries, if you want to kidnap a child, the child can actually give you so much difficulty that you won't be able to take more than one or two, and you now, of course, it will delay and so on. Then we have an effective communication. This is the most important element. When you get these early warnings, when you hear something or you dictate something, who do you talk to? How do you transfer this to the school authorities? How do you now get it to the security authorities? So we have a rapid response team comprising the major security agencies, the military at the top. We have civil defense, we have the police. We even have local vigilantes, and that is where some of our ex-servicemen operate. So every school has what we call a school-based management committee with a security subcommittee. And these are the people that appoint those with numbers that are shared across the security chain to ensure that if all information gets to them, and they can now pass it on to those who can respond. And generally, across the country, depending on the degree of severity in terms of risk, we've put together rapid response teams that will involve the Air Force, the Army, depending on the degree of severity. And that is going to be implemented. In fact, we just submitted our recommendations to government about 2 weeks ago. So that's one challenge. The other is the fact that currently there is some bit of confusion about who takes responsibility. States and local governments are really those at the grassroots. But the weapons or the instruments for them to repel such or to if you like, respond to these challenges are federal. Because even the police is a federal force, the civil defense is a federal force. So we need to do something.
And I'm sure the